We got a couple people coming in. Hey, how are you? All right, before we get started, Kevin, will you open us with a word of prayer, please? Thank you very much.
Our Father, we come before you as we start this day. We thank you so much for giving us life and the opportunity to come together to study from your word. That you be with all of us here, that be the teachers, be with us, and with the talk, or what we talk about is solely on our love for you, and that we can grow in our understanding of your love for us. We thank you that you are pleased with us. Through Christ we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much. We are in Genesis chapter 4. Before we dive into 4, let's talk a little bit about what we studied in 3. It's interesting. Brad and I both have consistently said, man, we could take weeks on each one of these chapters, and I think it's really interesting because when even Paul looks at the order of things and makes these divine conclusions led by the Spirit, and so there's so much happening here in the beginning that would set precedents, right? And we're going to talk a little bit about that this morning. I thought it was very interesting, and we'll talk about it, that Cain and Abel are the first two that are born by humanity, not by God. And so that sets a precedence in and of itself. But it's very interesting to kind of I tend to want to draw out maybe too much from some of this stuff just because I find it so interesting. But what do you guys remember most about chapter 3, which was the temptation and the fall and the judgment? What punishment did he give to the serpent? Crawl on his belly, and more cursed than any of the other. Very good. And that there would be enmity between woman, her offspring, and the serpent. And that what that means is that's a forever thing, right? And we see that. We actually touched on it very briefly, how we saw this actually playing out in Revelations as well. So in the beginning and in the end, there was still enmity between the serpent and the mother and her offspring. What about the woman? There's a couple things that he said to the woman, all kind of, once again, all of this in context of their identity, right?
Childbirth would be more painful.
Be more painful, greatly increase your labor pains. We don't have to guess at that, do we? And it's not just at the point of delivery either, in my opinion. It's the whole mechanic of creating life, okay? The NET says you will want to control your husband, but he will dominate or rule over you, right? We talked a little bit about this gift that God had given to the woman, that's this divine characteristic of creating life and sustaining life, and he made that much more painful, right? What about the man?
Real quick, Jesse,
Yeah,
also
yeah.
on that. Yes, pain in childbirth, absolutely. But now pain in death, also of potential loss now.
Yeah.
And just the emotion pain that you go through as a parent, as a mother, in watching your offspring who now are on the same fate as you are, that death has now entered the plan.
I totally agree. And once again, it's mentioned the labor pains, and I think as God typically does, that's more pervasive than just the surface level, ouch, this hurts, right? And now, with being given the gift to create life, now to have to witness additionally the loss of that life, right? I mean, there's whole psychological volumes on a mother being too protective of children, right? Like, it goes into all that. I remember Jordan Peterson had said, a good mother must necessarily fail, right? In that having to step back, having to withdraw part of that motherhood, if you will, for the sake of independence. I always thought that was interesting. So absolutely, I think it's more than just those pains, those physical labor pains. I think there's a lot more going on there. And to Adam he said, the ground is cursed because of you. In painful toil you will eat of it all the days of your life. It will produce thorns and thistles for you, but you will eat the grain of the field. And by the sweat of your brow you will eat food. He starts to define what death is. You came from dust and you're going to return to dust. Now, were man and woman smarter than before they had taken of the tree of knowledge of good and evil?
They were aware.
They did know more. Okay? Like, they knew that they were naked. They did acquire some knowledge, and did it make their lives happier? Absolutely not. I mean, that's a rhetorical question. And so it's very interesting, this in their pursuit for the desire of knowledge and this thing that looked good for food, it destroyed everything. And it destroyed everything because they simply fell out of the order that God had created, right? All right, let's go to chapter 4. Let's see here. It's a good way to divvy this up. Let's just go 1 through 5. Dawson, would you read 1 through 5 in chapter 4 there, please?
1 through 5.
Yes, please.
Now Adam knew Eve, his wife, and she conceived and bore Cain, and said, I have gotten a man from the Lord. Then she bore again, this time his brother Abel. Now Abel was a keeper of sheep, but Cain was a tiller of the ground. And in the process of time it came to pass that Cain brought an offering of the fruit of the ground to the Lord. Abel also brought of the firstlings of his flock and of their fat. And the Lord respected Abel and his offering, but he did not respect Cain and his offering. And Cain was very angry, and his countenance fell.
Okay, very good. So many implications here, but anything stick out to you before we dive into some questions? Yeah.
I don't know how to explain it. It seems like Cain and Abel are not first kids.
Not the what?
First children.
Okay, and what makes you say that?
Well, in chapter 3, we're talking about, like, God will multiply your pain and childbirth. Like, is there a gap here?
I don't know. There have been statements about this, that there are other, and this is like, so I don't have a great answer for that. There's because he commanded to be fruitful and multiply long before this, so I don't know. But there's maybe some room for speculation there. It does seem like it. So what I've heard is that it's very interesting. We make assumptions based on this chronological order, and of course Adam and Eve were created with awareness that no childhood, you know what I mean? There is this kind of apparent time that has happened. So I don't know if things were set in motion, but it is interesting to think about for sure. Yeah.
I know what you were asking, but I just...
Yeah, and it seems to be, once again, this inherent awareness of how to cultivate, how to shepherd, how to, you know, so I don't know if that was just this divine thing that was instilled in them, because it seems like more societal behavior rather than just you are the very first living beings. Anything else? The NET states in verse 1 that Eve gave birth to Cain, then she said, I have created a man just as the Lord did. That's the NET translation of that. And Dustin, I know you had a different one. Does anyone else have a variation on that phrase about receiving a child from the Lord?
Our book says, with the help of the Lord.
With the help of the Lord. So this is really interesting. And I think, once again, there's this recognition of where life comes from, but really, at least according to the NET, I have created a man in the manner that the Lord did. This recognition that she has this divine quality of being able to produce life. Yeah.
I just was looking at the original word, and the original word is actually also acquired. Was also used in getting cattle and learning how to keep the cattle.
Interesting.
So it talks about acquiring and to procure, with implication to have and be the carer of.
It makes me wonder, kind of back to Holly, like obviously they would maybe by this time have seen life being made in at least the animals, right? If they didn't already have that inherent knowledge, maybe they would have witnessed that. But yes, this idea here in the NET, it talks about with the help of or in the manner of is very interesting. So I like NET's translation there typically. This one is pretty different than what some of the other things, or that some of the other translations use, but very interesting. Yep.
Probably, no matter which translation you look at there, I mean, the New King James says, man from the Lord.
Yes.
And so it's more of, God blessed me with this. I think that's the takeaway from it.
Yeah.
It's not, we don't create anything, God creates.
Right.
He allows us to utilize His creation to continue to blossom.
Absolutely.
And grow.
Yeah, and it's just would be interesting to know the pain that she experienced that first time, right? But also then, as John talks about, like what the mother feels the moment that she's delivered a child and brought life into the world, right? Like, okay, very good. Abel took care of flocks, and Cain cultivated the ground. Verse 3 says, at a designated time. What does the book say there at the beginning of verse 3? In the course of time. Okay. So what can you assume about Cain and Abel bringing something to offer to the Lord?
It wasn't instant, it took time to.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, it wasn't instant.
Known and clear responsibility.
Very good. There's a known and clear responsibility, meaning either God instilled them with this desire or very clearly said, this is your relationship with me, right? And so we talk about law, capital L, right, and law in general. And here we see that because man is the offspring of God, there is a recognition of the Maker. There's a recognition of the Creator, and that's recognized here in the form of sacrifice, right? This is maybe a universal concept.
Jesse?
Yeah.
I think it also shows mercy on God's part, because He didn't say, you must give me the best of it right now. He knew.
Interesting.
He knew they
Okay.
knew.
Okay.
It was gonna take time, so
Okay.
He didn't, the minute they got kicked out, say, you have to start sacrificing in the course of time, as they
Yeah.
got in and got their ground cultivated and got their
Yeah.
flocks going, that's when he started to require the sacrifice.
Man, I feel like you could, I have grown in appreciation for God being this teacher, but in Jen's terms, a gardener, like cultivating things. Like they would have had to feel what it felt like to work the ground. They would have had to feel what it felt like to work this hard, then to harvest, then to go, I want to hold on to this because this took a ton of effort. And then for God to say, you give me the best, right? Like that concept is pervasive throughout, but same for cultivating the ground and taking care of the flocks. Like maybe there is just universal relationship lessons that are being learned as they're working hard and then also going, but who gave me this? Who created this? Who gave me this life? In recognition in that. Okay, yeah.
We can go to Hebrews 11th chapter, and like the great hall of faith. He says in verse 4, by faith. Okay, how do we have faith? We hear,
Here, yep.
we understand, believe. He says, by faith, Abel offered to God a more excellent sacrifice. So this is the Hebrew writer recording what happened back
Yes.
then.
Yeah.
And expressing the fact that it was by faith that this occurred. And so, obviously, the faith that Cain had was not as great as the faith
Not
that
as
Abel had.
convicted, yeah. I can see that, yeah. Do you think, because this is when I was younger, I was like, oh, animals versus plants. Do you think that that's the difference here? I see you shaking your head no. You want to say why?
Well, I think it's, Abel had enough trust that the words matter of the firstborn of his flock. And what it says of Cain is an offering of the fruit of the ground. So it was, the way I'm thinking of excess,
Yes.
I can give that to God.
Yes.
Where Cain says, no, the first, I trust him that there will be more, but I'm going to give him the first.
Yeah.
And that was the telling of the heart.
Absolutely, and I think that that's why it ties back into Hebrews, where it's like, the NET says, firstborn of the flock, even the fattest of them, right? Like the first fruits. That is the concept, the first fruits.
Yeah, I would go along with it because we later find out that there are grain offerings.
Exactly, yes.
So it's not the matter of livestock versus grain. It is the first.
Yeah.
And I know there's theories about when it says fruit of the ground, whether it's like an apple that has fallen to the ground or like a fruit that's actually like on the ground like a bush. But I think it goes to like the difficulty of getting it, of putting that work and effort in, going and taking an apple from a tree, gathering those and finding the good ones rather than just walking past a bush and taking some.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Don?
In Proverbs, it says that the sacrifice of the wicked is an abomination to God.
Yes, yeah.
So there was something wrong with either his attitude or his sacrifice. He knew God was not going to be pleased with, I think, and just went ahead anyway, because of what he wanted.
Yes, absolutely. So there's a very, very different heart between these two and their offerings. And so God was very pleased with Abel's and was not pleased with Cain. So what was Cain's response? He became very angry, and his expression was downcast. Now, I have this next few verses highlighted just because there's so much meat on this bone. Then the Lord said to Cain, "Why are you angry, and why is your expression downcast? Is it not true that if you do what is right, you will be fine? But if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at the door. It desires to dominate you, but you must subdue it." Cain gets very angry. You can, like if this were a movie, you could see them start to brood and just internalize a lot of this anger, and it's, you know what happens to anger if it goes unchecked, right? It continues to grow. What's God's response here? For it doesn't seem like Cain went to God, but what does God do here in this instance when he sees that Cain is clearly brooding?
He gave him a warning. He said, again, in his mercy, he came to him and said, watch out.
Yeah.
I see your
Yeah.
face is falling.
Yes.
I see
Yes.
you are angry. Sin is coming next.
Yeah.
He could be angry and not sin.
Yeah.
The sin is crouching at your door. You are going to do something you should not do if you do not watch out. Check yourself.
Very good. Yeah, that's mercy and instruction. Remember when Paul says we have had human fathers that have corrected us and we've respected them for that, right? Because we don't want, ultimately we don't want the consequences of what our actions will take us to if we let that anger grow. Yes. Did you have your hand up?
I see God also reminding him of the power that God has given him.
Yes.
The power over sin.
Yep.
That he's not only given to him, but he's given all of us by the choices that he's allowed us to make.
Yeah, I think that that's really important too, because God has given us a spirit of His authority. He has given that to us. And it's played out even in nature when He says, you will have dominion, subdue the animals. There is a spirit of authority that He has given within us to govern, okay? And part of that governance is of the self and of the thoughts and of the actions. And so he lays out this very simple solution to evil. If you do right, you will be fine. That sounds so simple. If you don't do right, what happens next? Kim started to point this out. See, he is giving a warning, but he's laying out the progression of what sin is. Sin is crouching at the door. Its desire is to dominate you. This is all the way back, right? Like, now that they have the knowledge of good and evil, now that we're aware of our shame and our guilt, there is this thing. This was the thing we could not handle, right? This knowledge was too great for us. And now we must deal with the consequence of knowing that sin's desire is for us. Paul talks about this obviously quite a bit, and the difference between the law, but the fact that now sin has no rule over us. Sometimes it feels like it does, correct? And I think maybe even Cain felt so overwhelmed by his anger, and God had to go, listen, it will want to dominate you. That's its desire. You have to subdue it. That's your job, your responsibility. That's your spirit of authority that I've given you for my character.
And how
yeah.
often do we ignore warnings? When we are so bent on this has to happen this way, or I was wrong, or I put in the effort and you're not recognizing it, and we're warned of, hey, ease off.
Yeah.
And when we're in the wrong mindset, we don't heed that warning. We just go full in, and it almost strengthens our
Resolve to do, yeah, yes.
No, this is the path I'm going. Yeah.
And once again, Paul talked about how sin is awakened by the warning. In his case, the law. It's like when I tell you not to do something, you're like, wait a minute, I really want to do that thing now, right? Or if I'm warned and it's like, no, I am right in this situation, and I'm gonna keep pushing forward. Yeah.
It's just like our free will is engage with our stubbornness.
Yes, yeah.
And we don't stop to think when God's given us this warning, He already knows what's going to happen. He's given us an opportunity for our free will to decide which path we're going to take. But we don't realize He knows where it's going. And so we listen to Him and have, our confidence in Him and do it the right way, we're going to be a lot better off.
Yeah. Yeah, I really love this verse, and it frustrates me so bad. Because like I recognize, Don, what you're saying is that human nature and the gift of free will that is difficult to subdue, right? It's difficult to overcome that, and yet that is what God is telling us to do. Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking, tying this in practically, just like my experience of like these verses and the whole idea of like continue to walk with God, and if you do well and you abide in Christ, right, then it becomes easier to overcome sin. And then whenever you deviate from that, I'm on my own path, I don't need God. Maybe we don't actively think those thoughts, but like our actions are showing that, right? And we have our excuses of, okay, well maybe I'm not in prayer as much, maybe I'm not doing what I need to be doing. And then the temptation becomes stronger and it becomes harder to overcome, right? You naturally start to fall into that. That's just practically thinking through, that's where my mind goes reading these verses.
Absolutely. And as I was kind of thinking about some of this and just the frustration with being selfish. I mean, honestly, like we're given our own will, and then we just kind of use it for ourselves. And then you see God get to the point where like, I think I'm just going to start over, right? Like, and He does in a way. There's kind of a hard reset there of destroying man. And then starting over there, Don, and then...
Well, and I think this is also phase 2 of the devil's plan of deception.
Yeah.
Because now that sin has entered the world, is God trustworthy? So God told Cain, if you do well, will you not be accepted? His answer to that was no.
Right.
Because if I was there, no, I gave you an offering, and it wasn't acceptable. I can't please you. And again, that's that deception that Satan brought in, that God can't be fully trusted. And now we're seeing another result of that.
Yeah, this is the first recorded set of humans that went through childhood, that gained a brotherly bond, that, you know what I mean, like all of these things. And then how does that start to play out in ego and recognition of God's authority? I mean, he's talking to God here, and yet he's not getting it. Cole?
Yeah, so the question that always, I think it boils down to is, who do you have in mind? And so the path from there will see itself through, depending who you're thinking of. Like even Eve, in her childbirth, was thinking of the Lord and the blessings, acknowledging that it's coming from Him.
Yeah.
Abel was acknowledging the Lord, that the blessings came from Him, and going, I have you in mind with this sacrifice. Cain seemingly had himself in mind. And so we see the two different paths that go from there. And so to me, it just always comes back to, who do you have in mind? Because if it's self and my path, no, this has to be right, I've got myself in mind. Or we could go back to Hebrews 11 and go, don't know where I'm setting out for.
Right.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Because I trust that God is taking care of me along the way, and I'll get where I'm supposed to be going. And so it's just like, do we have ourselves in mind, or do we have God in mind? And the actions that spring from that go two totally different directions. And I think that's what we're seeing here.
I really like that, at least for me too, and maybe just in modern society, like focusing on one thing seems almost impossible. Like focusing on a thing all the time when you consider all the distractions, all the responsibilities. And so this is why I feel like Jesus is saying, do this in remembrance of me. Refocus where your focus is. So like refocus who I am, what I did, what God did, because I feel like that can be forgotten by Sunday night, right? Like just, so I think that's really good. Yeah.
So, hearing a couple of these comments, and a word you just used a minute ago, really come to light. This is the very first several lessons on authority. Who is the authoritative figure? That's God. Okay? Abel acquiesced to that authority and played to the responsibility of responding to that. Cain chose to take on his own authority and not and rebel against that authority. And so that it just sets the precedent of this is how man is going to go all the way through life and through the ages. I mean, all the way when we were discussing Jude, and you had men there that were against authority.
Yeah.
They didn't want to recognize the authority of Jesus Christ.
And that's done in childbirth, it's done in sacrifice, it's done in warnings. It's like, yes, if you're recognizing it, and this is really interesting. So let's read, because I want to pull this point back in. Cain said to his brother Abel, let's go out to the field. While they were in the field, Cain attacked his brother, and Abel killed him. Then the Lord said to Cain, where is your brother Abel? And he replied, I don't know. Am I my brother's keeper? There's almost such a familiar relationship that even in the garden, the way that God spoke, and they're just allowed to talk to it's like, you get to the Ten Commandments and they're like, we can't even go to the mountain, right? Like, we can't even be in proximity or we're going to die, right? And yet we have this here. And to your point, look at how he answers. Look at the way that he interacts with God. I don't know. Am I am I supposed to take care of my brother now? And I mean, in a way you could be, that's like, didn't you grow up and take care of one another? And Chase.
That same interaction, I didn't want to
Yep.
pull us away from the conversation, but that same interaction I was questioning in, I think verses 4 and 5. The Lord had regard for Abel and his offering, but for Cain and his offering he had no regard. And I'm thinking like, okay, like in the garden, Adam and Eve, whatever that looked like, had some personal relationship, like face to face with God. And then, but at least Cain and Abel at least knew enough to know what the Lord's
and expectations.
He fired the king down, like
right.
you see later on, or like how did he know? Because he's obviously upset enough. Like Cain knew, right? It wasn't like God just like judged and then Cain and Abel weren't aware. Like Cain knew, and that's why he was angry, because he understood what God thought about this. So that just, it's a side conversation, but it was like, what did that look like? You know what I mean?
It is very interesting, because have you ever, once again, parent-child relations, this is like an excellent analog to parent-child relationship, because you'll have some kids, when they know that they've disappointed you, they'll get very sad. And then some that get very angry, right? And like, you know why they're getting angry. And it's not for the right reasons, but you still understand why. This is very much feels like a parent kind of child relationship. And so I thought that this was interesting. So let's keep reading 10 down through 12, but
I love the wording when it said crouching.
Yes.
It's not like the devil's sitting there banging on your door like, hey, this is the devil, let me in.
Yes.
But it's crouching and waiting for that slip up of sin. And it's, as soon as he sins, it's not an immediate condemnation. It's, the devil's ready, but he continues to pursue it into the killing of his brother. It's
very true. In fact, yes, absolutely. This isn't like a full frontal attack. Like, it is very subtle. And in fact, the Hebrew here carries with it a sexual connotation. There is a quote-unquote arousal, this desire for you carries with it a little bit. And so I think of an animal wanting to prey upon, like destroy and kill and maim and that kind of thing. And this is meant to carry both of those, which is very interesting. But the Hebrew here actually carries with it this connotation of subtlety and desire and temptation. And in this way, what does unification with that represent? Death, right? It gives birth. That's why it talks about sin giving birth to death. Borrows from this imagery, which I thought was very interesting. So absolutely, I always thought that was an interesting choice of words there.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is also a good example of the concept that we talk about. Many times you'll hear it said, the Lord won't give us more than we can bear. But he does, because he wants us to rely on him.
Yeah, yeah.
And what he's telling Cain is, yeah, you have this to bear.
Yes,
But
yes.
you need to rely on me, and you
Yeah.
need to stay with me, but
Yeah.
what did Cain choose?
Yeah, that's a great point. We could probably spend another lesson on going, well, you told me to subdue it. How am I supposed to, how am I supposed to do that? And there is one way in that we ultimately overcome sin. It's not our will that can do it. Every human that has ever been born and known the difference between right and wrong has proven that will alone will not do it, except for one, right? And so the way that you subdue it is in recognition that our will is not sufficient.
The other concept I see here is, obviously they knew what the Lord wanted,
Yes.
okay, to your point earlier.
Yeah.
And now, Cain, somebody made the point, my offering's not good enough. Well, I
Yeah.
did my own will,
Right,
I offered
right,
to you what I
right.
thought I wanted to offer.
Yeah.
How's that different from today in worship, when we offer to the Lord what he has not asked for?
Mhm.
Rather than doing his will and offer him what he wants. And we want to feel justified that, well, we offered it. We are doing this. Praise to you.
Yeah.
Okay, it's not what I asked for.
You know, that's interesting, because you can probably make the assumption that they knew the assignment. And Cain maybe, this is conjecture on my part, Cain maybe at that point goes, well, I know how to satisfy this thing without giving. You know, it's like, well, yeah, I get it. We're supposed to give here. Have some of this leftover stuff, like Don had mentioned. It's like, well, that's satisfying the requirement. And that's not in recognition of the provider of that. Like Abel, who is like, I have received this, and so the best goes back to the ultimate giver of this. So many lessons here.
Jesse,
Yeah.
you also, even after Cain slays Abel, like, in my mind, when God's asked him where your brother is, it's almost just kind of like, still just this condescending, just like, still angry response.
Yes,
You know? It's like,
it feels childish,
it's like,
yeah.
Hey, I'm not my brother's
Yeah.
keeper. Like,
Yeah.
why should I be keeping tabs on him? And so, seeing his response through this, in my mind, I go, he's still, and this is where, like, it's dangerous if the building blocks of sin keep building. It's harder and harder to get out of that. And you still see, after slaying his brother, there's no remorse. There's no turning away. There's no, what have I done? And it's like, he's fully vested in being gripped and enslaved to the sin. And so it's just like, maybe in the short term, he thought, well, my problem's solved.
Right.
Well, now he's heading for a different awakening, right? And so that's just also a reminder to us that giving in to the momentary desire can have long-term
Yes.
consequences, right? And so the longer you let that fester, you know, because Don was talking about that too, it's like what happens, and you were too, it's like what happens if that anger isn't addressed, right? It just compounds and compounds. And then you start creating narratives in your mind that aren't
Yes.
even
Yeah.
true.
Am I my
And-
brother's keeper? What do I have
and
to- yeah.
in Cain's mind, he's probably thinking, now everything Abel says, it's like, well, he's just trying to
Yes.
be the
Yes.
golden child. He's
Yep.
trying to be blah, blah, blah. And you're creating false narratives and you start believing the lie. And now it's like you fully vested him as an enemy and he hasn't even done anything
Yeah.
to you directly.
Yeah.
And so that's part of that danger, and that's why it's like to fall is one thing, but go, what have I done? Get back on track. Who do I have in mind, right? And that's just the danger that we see here.
It is, there's so much there. Like, I think about the fact that Cain said, come out to the field. There's a premeditation. So it reminds me of the way that God or Jesus explains the progression starting from the heart, right? To your point, you have these internal dialogues and he's like, oh, look at him. He's just trying to gain approval again. Oh, look at how, and it just builds and builds and builds. And that is the sin leading to death, right? Like, we literally watch this play out to literal physical death. And I know we got to go. So for Wednesday, I want you guys to focus in on this blood crying out from the ground. What do you think that means? Why did God hear that? What does that imply? Like, I love this section because to me, it is refocusing you back to the whole natural order of things, right? Like, oh, Cain, you were just mad and you decided to break the divine order for yourself. And now look at what this has become. And then we're going to get into the punishment, which is also very interesting too. Just the way that God handles this. Look at verse 10 where he says, what have you done? He asked the same thing of Eve when she took of the fruit. What is this that you have done? And it never, like, usually we ask that out of anger, right? And so my first instinct is like, was he angry? But part of me is also thinking he's just going, do you know do you recognize what you've done here? Like, same thing, like, yeah, I asked you not to do this. Is this resonating with you? We use that term all the time. Like, do you know what you've done? If Cain were to step back and go, what did I do? I let the anger build. He gave an offering. I didn't give a great offering, right? That could have been the repentance. What have I done is a call to repentance, if you will. And so there could have been a moment where he goes, I broke the divine order of things for my own benefit because I was mad and jealous that I didn't do the right thing.
Well, that call to repentance finds us in the New Testament too, when it talks about the one who hates his brother is,
yes,
guilty as a murderer, right? And it's not because of any physical act, but it's because of the same root cause.
Same root cause.
Same root cause that drove Cain.
Yeah.
If that's living in you, it's like, that's the warning. That's your fate. You've committed, the root cause has you gripped. So you might as well have gone through the full act, just like Cain did.
Correct.
And so it's just like, stop.
There wasn't an accident in the language being used there. Yeah, Jay.
He was angry with his brothers or committed murder in his heart.
Correct. He had already committed, and the fact that Jesus calls the devil a murderer from the beginning. If life is this divine quality and characteristic of God, to undo that is one of the strongest corruptions of the divine order. Does that make sense? Now couple that with brotherhood as well. And there's some spiritual implications there. There's some biological implications there. But so Wednesday, we're going to get back in. I knew that we would take a little bit longer on 4. I wanted to spend time on this first section of 4 because the sin crouching at the door and the blood crying from the ground are two of my I don't want to say favorite, but like for me, they're so impactful, and I don't mind spending time. So be ready Wednesday night to talk a little bit more about 4, and thank you guys.